If you're applying for disability benefits or help people that are, the path to success has never been more complicated. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast, where we tackle the difficult issues and interview the country's top experts to help you better navigate the disability process. Winning a disability case is hard and keeps getting tougher every day. We can't promise you'll win your case by listening, but we sure think it's going to help.
This really isn't that complicated. I mean, you want to win your case, don't you? Well, then listen to what I say.
Hey, I'm Chad Brown. Welcome to the Disability Expert Podcast. With you again today, interviewing another one of the country's top disability experts. So excited to have Leah Broker as my guest today. Leah, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let me tell you a little bit about Leah, why she's on the show, and why I'm sure she's going to give us some great information to help us navigate disability cases. One of the most experienced lawyers in North Carolina. I've been doing disability work for well over 30 years. Marquette undergrad, went to UNC Law School, practiced in Asheville, North Carolina for almost all of her career. And in addition to doing disability work, she does workers' comp, has done a few other things. Very, very committed to pro bono work, has won multiple awards for her commitment to working with the community, people who don't have means, don't have resources, in addition to our disabled clients. Deep commitment to the disability community in Western North Carolina and North Carolina across the board. We've been friends a long time. So excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So let's talk about just a bunch of things I want to talk about, especially Western North Carolina. I want to talk about Hurricane Helene and talk about the impact you had there. But before we get to that, can you just tell us a little bit about how did you get in disability space? How did you end up being a Social Security disability lawyer? It's so funny. I interview all these people that come on my show and no one ever says, well, I woke up in high school and said, what do you want to be? And they said, disability lawyer. Like that never happened. So how did you end up in the space, which you've been in for a long time? And tell us about that.
Sure. Well, it's funny you say high school because I actually decided I wanted to be a lawyer in high school. I was watching a little show called LA Law back in the day. And after watching that a while, my mom said that I was about 14 years old. And she said, you would make a great lawyer just because the way you talk and argue and just, you're very passionate. And I said, that's a great career. And I locked in on it. So I actually always wanted to be a lawyer since about 14 or 15. But I imagined that I was going to leave the little farm we lived on. I had a class of 43 that I graduated. So I was in a K through 12 of one building and I couldn't wait. I was going to leave. I was going to go to New York City and be a corporate lawyer and make money and look like those people on TV. So thankfully, I ended up at Marquette University from undergrad, and it's a fantastic Jesuit school. And I ended up hating the one business class I took and ended up getting an English degree. So I had amazing professors. You had to take a lot of history, philosophy. So I already was softening and wanting a different path, but I went to law school not knowing, and I lucked out. I applied for jobs, I graduated, and I came to Asheville for my first associate position. And it was for David Gant, who had a solo practice. He did Social Security, workers' comp, personal injury. And I didn't know about Social Security. I didn't know about workers' comp. You took torts in law school, but I didn't have experience. And thanks to that first job in 1992, I worked real hard and had a high caseload and was having hearings and comp trials, and I loved it. And after 4 years with David, I decided I wanted to hang my own shingle, and I've been self-employed ever since. And just all the clients I got to help and all the folks in the community, there was never a time that I didn't want to keep doing Social Security and workers' comp.
Yeah, that's neat. North Carolina probably has one of, if not the strongest history in the disability bar. I mean, all the way, if you go back into the early 80s, you had always had a really strong bar here, a big community. It's interesting you talk about David Gann, who I know, and actually Daniel Bridgman, who bought his firm as an expert, who's actually on my show. His episode's already been shot, but it hasn't dropped
great.
yet. So that's really neat. So why have you stayed in it though? I mean, because obviously that's not where you envisioned yourself when you started this
No.
journey, but here we are 30 years later. So something's kept you there.
Yeah, it's been great. Of course, you get better and better at it. And the longer you do it, you feel more comfortable. You have thousands of hearings, with so many different judges. And then lots of clients send their friend, their neighbor, their spouse, their kid. And so the largest number of my referrals are from former clients and their families or their neighbors, or they'll bring them up here. They'll actually bring their person and say, I told them you could help them. It's just super rewarding. I mean, you have people hugging on you and crying when they get the news that they're going to be approved,
Sure.
especially if you find out at the hearing, which is rare, but when you do, they
Yeah.
just don't know what to do. So the gratitude and just it's a great way for me to help folks that are less fortunate. It's a very feel good area of law.
And I want to talk about, there's some other things I want to talk about in your disability expertise, but being in Western North Carolina, I know just from listserv posts and things that were going on during Hurricane Helene, I think a lot of the country doesn't really appreciate some of the challenges that disabled community and the communities in general actually had in Western North Carolina. And I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, I mean, horrific event, I think $60 billion in damage, or projecting it might be as high as $200 billion in damage in Western North Carolina. What was your personal experience like? I mean, how did you handle that? What happened? How did what was that experience like for you? Because obviously it's a tragedy.
It was surreal. I'm lucky because I did not have damage to my home or office, and that is lucky. There was survivor's guilt was real for a while, but
Wow.
as far as just going through it, if you weren't here, you can't understand that it was like out of a apocalyptic movie. Nothing. You had no phone service, none, no 911, nothing, no internet, no TV, no. I mean, luckily I had an emergency solar hand crank radio that I dug out and shoved batteries in. And that was our lifeline. That's how we heard about the river crest stages. And there was some local personalities on the radio. And I mean, at times they were crying, but it was awful. You couldn't. So I was able to finally get out a few days later. I live out a country road in East Asheville down Riceville, and driving over and under power lines and trees just laid across all of it. And it was awful. So not being able to communicate and not being able to communicate with your family and then obviously your clients and your staff, you didn't know, but I didn't have power or water for 13 days at my house. I'm on a well, so if you can get a well, get one. The moment we had power, I had water. So
Yeah, sure.
my home, I have a high school daughter, a senior who's 18, and we had a bunch of the teenagers over. Their parents couldn't find them. They had no way to text them. They had slept over because they had canceled school.
Oh, wow.
So I was feeding, and we were dealing with, grabbing buckets of water and doing this and that. We all checked on our neighbors. And this went on. And then I got water back. And so I opened my home and people came and showered and did their laundry for
Sure.
another month after that.
So it's top of news. It's there. Like, now, how would you describe like the community there now? But if you could specifically talk some about like, what about your clients? How are your clients impacted by this? Because they obviously often had bigger needs even to start with before this happened. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of my clients lost their homes or their vehicles, and then several had damage, so they had to live somewhere else for a while. So we were having to put in like emergency address changes, update. Some had a lot of folks, if you're familiar with the mountains, their roads washed out. So the little culverts that just connect, your road to your private driveway, those washed out. So there was people that couldn't get out for a long time. And people are forgetting about it. And the damage here is still astronomical. Everywhere you drive, I mean, there's still tractor trailers flipped over. There's still piles of trees. My clients, I brought in a friend of mine to help my staff. And when we finally because we had no phones or internets for, was it a couple of weeks at the office downtown? There was no water. We had to use porta-johns outside of my office building, but we were able to get back in, and I brought in a friend and we called every single client to try and find them and do a note to confirm that they were okay. And it was a miracle none of them had died, but I did lose a wonderful attorney, mediator, Mike Dry, him and his wife, Nora, that I've known for my whole 32 years here. They were washed away and killed along with their grandson. His office is off Swanano River Road. So it was a home and an office, and they were on the roof, and they couldn't get rescued in time. So I found that out on I left town for a few days to just get sane and have internet and phone. And I found that out. So, it was horrible. So the clients now are still behind. A lot of them lost all their paperwork, so they had nothing. And so when I'm trying to help them, we're trying to help navigate. I have filed so many late appeals for good cause, right? So their initial denial or their recon denial had long passed. And Social Security so far has granted them. It's just a pain, you have to type it all up. It's a paper thing and you fax it. And then Social Security says they didn't get it. The actual Social Security office they were terribly understaffed. Ever since the hiring freezes years ago, when somebody retires, they can't replace them. So the hold times and the wait times for Asheville were terrible before this. And then, of course, everything was shut down for quite a while. So I think they're still playing catch up, but they are granting those late appeals right now. I don't know how much longer they'll grant them. But
Sure. I want to transition and I want to talk about the Social Security Administration. Before we do that, though, if we take just a brief break, so hear a word from our sponsor, CBIG.
Hey there, this is Kevin Rosenquist from the Disability Expert Podcast. Every week, Chad and his guests discuss the disability process and how expert attorneys help their clients obtain the Social Security disability benefits they deserve. But obtaining disability benefits is only half the battle. After winning your disability case, understanding Medicare should be your top priority, and that's where CBIG comes in. Disabled individuals must get their Medicare coverage right. Trying to understand Medicare can cause anxiety, uncertainty, and even fear. CBIG works with Medicare beneficiaries on disability around the country and is committed to helping those on disability navigate the complex Medicare process. Visit CBIGcares.com today to see how CBIG makes Medicare simplified. Mention this ad and receive a free gift when you schedule a 10-minute consultation.
Okay, well, we're back, and Helene was horrible. It got a lot of media attention. I know Caleb Wheeler, who's an attorney who works with me, was up there volunteering, working. He was sending back texts saying, you can't understand what's going on. It's worse than anything you could imagine in any kind of movie. And so obviously we moved through that and our clients are struggling. Our clients are struggling anyway. The government's not always been efficient on the Social Security Administration side to start with.
Right.
Now, obviously with DOGE and the push for government efficiency, we're hearing, I don't think it's happened yet as of the shooting today, but there's projection they're going to reduce staff by as many as 7,000 people. They've already offered early retirement to who are always the most skilled people. You talked about hiring freezes before. One of the things I don't think people appreciate is that the Social Security Administration is so large that if you just don't replace the people that retire, you end up with a significant reduction in staff. But people fail to understand those people that retire are not new employees. They're the most skilled, highest paid, but also the highest knowledge people in the agency. So you take those people out, you don't replace them. Now you're offering additionally those people the opportunity to leave. And you're talking about a reduction in force. So a couple of things. One, they're talking about shutting down remote offices, which I know in Western North Carolina is a big deal. Talk about that. Sure. And then you've done this a long time, just like I have. What do people need to understand is going to happen if this actually takes place? If they actually downsize, don't replace, shut down local offices, what's it going to look like in Western North Carolina in 12?
Well, for us, it's going to be devastating. People are going to die. And I don't think the government cares right now, but you have to understand, in all of the Western North Carolina, from McDowell County all the way to the Tennessee line and the South Carolina line, we don't have an OHO. So the farthest west office of hearings is Charlotte. So all of my hearings, my live in-person hearings, which is how I practice, 98% of my hearings are live in person, are all at a remote hearing site. So Asheville Downtown Federal Building is a remote hearing site for 2 different OHOs. So
let me just stop right there and make sure people understand. You think Asheville, big city, this is an actual OHO, which is the regional office for Social Security Administration for hearings. But actually it's not. Even a city as large as Asheville, it's actually a remote office. The regional office is actually in Charlotte.
No, I'm saying the closest office of hearings, which does not serve Western North Carolina, is Charlotte.
Is Charlotte. Okay, perfect.
The OHOs that serve all of Western North Carolina are Kingsport, Tennessee, and Greenville, South Carolina. But
Sure.
The Greenville, South Carolina hearing office is actually in Malden, which is a little bit south. So the Malden Social Security office serves all the far west counties along the Tennessee border, over 7,000 miles worth of land.
Right.
And they serve Henderson County, Transylvania County in the far west. And then the Kingsport hearing office serves the Asheville District Office, which is Buncombe County, McDowell County, Haywood County, Madison, and Yancey. So if all these, 100,000 people, however much 2, 3, 400,000 people that live in all of the Western North Carolina, if they want a live hearing, they're going to have to drive to Kingsport or drive to Malden, which could be a 4 or 5 hour drive, depending. Now, they haven't said they're getting rid of the Asheville remote hearing site, but they are closing the Franklin. So Franklin, North Carolina is a cute little town, and it's about an hour and 15-minute drive. And that's where all my far west folks go for their live hearing. So these are people on the Tennessee border. These are tier 3 poor economic counties. People have very limited cell phone coverage due to the spottiness, and they have very little internet. So the only way they can have a live hearing is to get themselves, and again, some of them still drive 2 hours, 3 hours to get to Franklin. Sure. They're closing the Franklin one. So if you want a live hearing, you're going to have to drive to Malden, South Carolina, unless they'll have them come to Asheville, which we don't know. So it's impacting people. And let me also chat about wait times on phones. One of the legal aid attorneys brought this up a couple years ago, and I was just like, didn't even think about it. A lot of my clients are poor, and a lot of our region is poor, and they rely on cell phones that are provided either free or at a discount through the DSS office. People call them food stamp phones, whatever. Well, they have limited minutes per month. So if you're on hold waiting to talk to Social Security to apply for disability or retirement, or your spouse just died and you're on hold for 40, 50 minutes, you're going to use up your entire month's phone allotment. So you can't get the call from the doctor. You can't get the call to set up your appointment. And right now, my office will be on hold sometimes 20, 30, 40 minutes, but at least they can just park it on hold on the office phone and carry on with work. So I just don't think people realize that, they say, oh, go online. Well, I don't have a computer, right? I don't have internet. And you can't apply for SSI without all of that paperwork they need. So the closures they're threatening and just the reduction in employees, these are frontline workers. They need to take these calls. It's not just, oh, I'm pretending to be disabled and I'm 34 and I don't want to work. No. It's every human that turns 65 that's an American citizen is entitled to their Medicare. Well, how are they going to get it? If they don't have a computer and they can't go online, they have to go to an office or talk to somebody. Spouse, survivor benefits. A person dies, how are they going to get signed up for their benefits? So the impact here is going to be dire due to the rural topography and the poverty.
Yeah, I think too, it's not just Western North Carolina. If you go to almost any mountainous area in the United States, any rural area in the United States, any sparsely populated area of the United States, the same things are going to happen. They're going to say, well, this office is not needed. It's too small. It's too remote. Let's shut it down. Failing to understand that you just cut off access at a way you can't really understand unless you are in the space and you sort of think about these issues and what's going to happen to the people. So
yeah, and the poor folks, they're also slashing the remote sites in Eastern North Carolina. So again, these are poor counties. They're going to shut down Elizabeth City and Roanoke Rapids and Greenville, North Carolina, where there's a medical school, there's a university medical school, and they don't need to have Social Security hearings there. So
I think
it's going to be hard.
I think so. And I hate that, because the other thing the staff reductions do is it just increases the wait times, and which are already bad. I mean, they're already bad because Social Security Administration is inefficient. But let's change topics. We could probably talk about how the government does Social Security Administration wrong.
It's pretty awful. Yeah.
So let's shift. Let's talk about vets a little bit. We'll just change topics. We'll talk about the veterans who aren't really treated correctly. You do a lot of vet work in the Social Security disability space, not in the VA disability space. I know you work with a lot of vets. What are some things that you see with those folks there in Western North Carolina? How do they navigate the Social Security disability process? What are things they don't know? I mean, how does your practice working with vets in the Social Security disability space? I mean, how's that work?
Yeah. So first of all, Asheville's home to a large, beautiful VA campus. I live right by there. And it's a full service, meaning it's got the hospital, the ER, and then all the clinics, all the subspecialties. It's got long-term care, it's got hospice. So we have a large percent of a veteran population. Some of it's temporary. Some of them are considered homeless because they come here to receive treatment. And then they get HUD housing to help with that. So I'm lucky enough to work with several nonprofit agencies that work with veterans, NC Serves, the Veteran Services of the Carolinas. So many veterans don't realize they're entitled to get their VA benefits and Social Security disability benefits. They just don't know it. I don't know if it's the VA doesn't realize it, or the doctors or the nurses or the social workers don't realize it. But a lot of veterans come to me long after their date last insured, but they have their disabilities that predate it, right? No brainer, clearly documented. And a lot of times they don't trust, the system. They don't trust the lawyers. So a lot of times I'll help one guy and then he sends me his 3 or 4 buddies, right? Especially the Marines. I don't know. They're just like, if their Marine buddy says she's good, they'll come in. And so in 2021, I had a guy come who was a friend of a guy I had helped, and his date last insured was 2011. And he hired me 10 years later, tells me everything. Well, he had been on 100% service connected since 2008.
Right.
And we were able to get all the records. So I was able to win. I mean, we had to go to a hearing. Luckily, we got a good ALJ. And he even told him, he said, your evidence goes back in time. And he got over 30 grand in back pay. It would have been way more, but it's,
Sure.
1 year before. But it's life changing for a lot of these folks because there's no offset for their service connected. So they get both and they just don't realize it. And then they also, I think, get frustrated. And like, if they get denied, I think they give up. So if I get them on the front end, like right after they've applied or to help them, sometimes I'll help them apply and then I have them all the way through.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, and that's my experience as well. A lot of times the vets don't, they don't like to be in the system. They don't like to be in the government systems at all. So it's about time to wrap up. I do want to ask you one thing.
Okay.
And I'd love to talk about this for like a whole show on its own, but just briefly tell us about the distillery that you own, which is
I'm lucky. Yeah, I grew up on a farm in mid-Missouri, and 5 or 6 years ago, my brothers and my dad decided that we needed to make my dad's dream come true to make his dad's corn whiskey recipe. And so it started out super small. We made 1 bourbon, 1 corn whiskey, a gin, and a vodka. And now we have 18 products. It's called Blacksmith Distillery. I'm a small percent partner, but I sometimes do commercials and I sometimes, do little promos, but it's been super fun. We just lost my dad in October to cancer, but he got to see the new distillery being built, and we all have real jobs. We hire a couple local guys to help just on the weekends to distill, but it's been a lot of fun and I've learned a lot about the distilling, and I'm very happy with all of our line of bourbons. We've got honey bourbon, we've got cinnamon whiskey that's 1,000 times better than Fireball, and we've got bourbons that are single barrel where we just pull it and it's 115 proof and we don't cut it and it's magic. It's good stuff. And it gave me excuse to go home a lot more. Cool. So, and connect and see my dad more and my brothers. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's a definite contrast to practicing disability law. I'll tell you that.
What's the name of the distillery?
It's Blacksmith Distillery in Lowman, Missouri. And check us out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It is a lot of fun, and it's an enjoyable way to hang out with your brothers and learn about how to make better bourbon.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate your time, appreciate your insight and what you've done for the disabled community, especially in Western North Carolina. Anyway, so that's a wrap for the Disability Expert Podcast for today. Be sure to subscribe and tune in for our next episode where we interview one of the nation's best experts. Thanks a lot.